I in the right place?
Are we live?
Check, check. Yes.
How many?
I'll give us the 30 seconds. So if we need some love letter.
Something's not right here.
Anthony will be late.
Yeah, he's come back.
I missed everything.
It's a good thing I'm not.
I completely messed it up.
I'm sorry. I think we got like 30 seconds.
How are you? I'm good. How are you? How are you?
He's good. I'm sorry? Yes, it says it in the agenda. Okay, perfect. All right, I think we have 20 seconds and counting. Do we have a clock? We need to get a clock here. All right, we're good? Is it 6:30? Oh, it is 6:30 on the dot. All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Would we all rise for the flag salute?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if we will all remain standing for a moment of silence for all those in harm's way, for all of our military, home and abroad. Thank you. Statement of advance notice. The notice requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act of the State of New Jersey have been satisfied by the inclusion of the date, time, and place of this meeting in the notice of regular meetings adopted by this board on January 6, 2025. Such schedule and notice of meetings is posted on the municipal building, at the municipal building, the Mount Olive Library, the Board of Education offices, and the 6 schools. It was submitted to the Daily Record for publication on January 7th, 2025, and was filed with the clerk of Mount Olive Township on January 8th, 2025. I direct that this announcement be entered into the minutes of this meeting. And Ms. Schoening will take a roll call, please.
Mrs. Aquino?
Here.
Mrs. Fenton?
Here.
Mrs. Figuera?
Here.
Mrs. Fitzgerald?
Here.
Mr. Giordano? Mr. Melendez?
Here.
Mrs. Narcisse?
I am here. And with that,
Or Mrs.
Mrs. Narcisse?
yes,
Sorry, Mrs. O'Neill?
I am here.
Mr. Orzillo?
Here.
we got everyone? Okay, with that, I will take a motion for the approval of the minutes. Ms. Melendez, you're looking right at me.
Present motion for the approval of the previous meetings.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Second, okay. And do we have any comments or discussion from the board on items 2.1 and 2.2? No? Okay, seeing none, we'll take a roll call, Ms. Schoening.
Mrs. Melendez?
Yes.
Mrs. Aquino?
Yes.
Mrs. Fenton?
Yes.
Mrs. Figuera?
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mrs. Narcisse?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Orzillo?
Yes.
And with that, are there any communications or petitions for the board or the superintendent?
No.
Anyone? Nope. Seeing none, we will move on to our reports and discussions. And we'll, do we have, and the mic is over here today, ladies. Student liaisons.
Oh, that's different.
We have the camera at a different
I
angle
like that.
today.
Oh, we have to stretch.
You can lower it.
Oh, we can lower it. Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'm Nor. I'm the Board of Ed liaison, and I'm Mia, the Vice President of the Student Council at Mount Olive High School. Okay. Starting off with our old business, on January 31st, we raised approximately $1,500 through our very first Marauder Royale. All the proceeds went to a mental health charity called Reach Out. It was a huge success. Layla Blakey was our winner, and all of our other talents did amazing. On Sunday, February 2nd, we had our MSA Food and Cultural Festival at our high school. We had food served from over 15 different countries, and we had an amazing turnout. Our annual Valentine's Day flower sale was February 5th through February 11th. We had a lot of people purchasing roses. And our all-district choir concert was held on February 19th with another great turnout. It went so smoothly. Our robotics team had their rollout event last Friday, the February 21st, and they look forward to their upcoming competition season. For athletics, our boys basketball season is ongoing with a record of 10-15. Our junior, Molly Smythe, became the second girls wrestler in Mount Olive history to qualify for the state tournaments, which is amazing. And our boys wrestling team won the District 6 wrestling tournament, advancing 13 out of 14 wrestlers to the regional tournament.
And now on to new business. We have our Lenape Valley Student Council coming to our high school tomorrow on Tuesday, February 25th. And our Student Council looks forward to showing them our events and how we are able to make them so successful. And the All-District Band Concert will take place on February 26th. And the All-District Orchestra Concert is scheduled for February 27th, which we are very excited about and we are looking forward to. We are hosting the Boys Wrestling Regionals Tournament this weekend, which should be a great turnout. The Special Olympics Bowling Regional Tournament will be held on Saturday, March 1st, which is super exciting and we are expected to do great. A mini college fair is scheduled for March 6th, where students can come and check out the schools that they're applying to or were already accepted to get insider information. The Robotics Mid-Atlantic Regional Championship will take place on March 7th, 8th, and 9th, with over 40 teams expected to participate, and this should be an incredible turnout, and we look forward to it. The Rising Freshman Curriculum Fair is set for March 12th at 6:30 p.m.
And then lastly, our NJGPA graduation requirement testing for the class of 2026 will take place on March 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th. The FBLA, we will be traveling to Atlantic City for the state competition from March 10th to 12th. And the National Honor Society Invitational will be held on March 18th, bringing in art schools from across the Northeast and awarding nearly $1 million in scholarships to our students. And that's all for today. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions from the board?
The winner of the Marauder Royale, how did they win?
Oh, so she sang an Adele song. I actually can't name it to you off the top of my head, but she did amazing.
That's
she was really
excellent.
good. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think it was When We Were Young by Adele.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah, she did amazing.
It was
Yeah.
really great.
Yeah, that's going to do it. Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. And with that, we'll move on to superintendent report.
And at this time, I would like to welcome Ms. Charlene Peterson from New Jersey School Boards, who's going to be presenting on the superintendent evaluation training. Thank you.
So I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to you about the superintendent's evaluation, and I love listening to the students. There's always just so much energy and so many amazing things going on in your district. So I also wanted to acknowledge, as much as we've heard the work of the students and other things, the work that the board has been doing. And probably, I don't know, it's about 4 or 5 years ago now that New Jersey School Board started like a new level of certification for individual board members, for new board members, trying to get you interested in training within your first 2 years of board service. And I was just looking, and so many of you have already earned the new board member certification. So in addition to having training together as a board team, just wanted to acknowledge all the work and the training that you're doing as individuals. And it just, helps the board be a stronger board when you kind of go outside these 4 walls, right, and bring in knowledge and information that you've learned from other boards and other sources. So just kind of wanted to commend you and thank you for that commitment to training on behalf of your students. So wanted to talk to you tonight about the superintendent's evaluation process. I was talking to the tech guys, and like, it's that time of year already? It seems like you were just here not that long ago when we talked about that. I'm like, you're right, the time did go by quickly, right? But we are kind of here, so again, I'm just going to take you through the process. So when we talk about the superintendent's evaluation process, it really comes back to the students and kind of essentially saying that this process is for the board and the superintendent to work together to be able to advance student achievement. So it helps the superintendent kind of improve, the work that she's doing. It, again, with the bottom line being the students, and then just provides us that basis to kind of come together and have a conversation about how we're doing. So as we think about it, sometimes you think about the superintendent's evaluation of perhaps just a one-time thing. We do the evaluation, but it's really a process, right? And it's a year-long process. And sometimes that's part of the challenge for kind of the timing of new board members, right? You start on January 1st, and the evaluation year has started July 1st. So here you are, kind of coming in the middle of it and, trying to kind of get caught up. But that's why it's important kind of that you have this training and, be able to have these conversations. So just wanted to kind of, as we look at the different components of saying, like, we need to have a calendar, training, talking about the goal setting, the importance of evidence, the tool, putting the document together, and then having that summary sit-down conference with the superintendent. So just going to kind of quickly take you through these steps of it. So it starts out really, and I have to say, when I was a board member, I didn't really even understand how much of this process is in statute, in code, in terms of what's required of us during this process. So it starts out essentially saying that we have to evaluate the superintendent at least once a year, has to be in writing, you have to meet to discuss the findings. So it'll be based on the goals and the objectives of the district, the responsibilities of the superintendent, and then any criteria is prescribed by the State Board of Ed, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. It has to be done by July 1st and include areas of strength, areas needing improvement, any recommendations for growth, and again, it all goes back to the students. And then that summary sit-down conference should include a majority of the total membership of the board. I have to say that that's one of the things sometimes that as boards kind of do their own process, sometimes they don't really realize. Like sometimes I think, well, just the board president and maybe the vice president are going to sit down, or the personnel, and try to say, no, like it's in statute and code that it has to be a majority of the total membership of the board. So one of the things that, as we look at kind of what our responsibilities are, as much as we say that this is among our most important responsibilities as a board member, we also know that there could be conflicts if you have a relative who works in the district. And so kind of essentially the guidance we would get from the School Ethics Commission would be, that you would be prohibited in participating in any and all matters related to the superintendent, including the evaluation of performance. And if you have any questions about that, you would always refer it to your board attorney for guidance. So in addition to kind of, recognizing that we have a legal responsibility, people would say, well, like, what happens if we don't do it? Like, is there a board police? Like, what happens? So it turns out the CUSAC decided that it would add this, kind of become the board police and add some points associated with the board completing this process on time. So you look and see that there are 6 points associated with the board completing the evaluation by July 1st. And that's a lot of points, right? So we want to make sure that we're doing our part then to make sure that that's not happening. And then also the importance of, making sure you have a policy and that new board members are trained on the process. So, it's required that all new board members are supposed to get trained within their first 6 months of taking office. But, now that we provide that training in Governance 1, so now you're pretty much getting it within your first 3 months just to make sure then that happens. So again, I'm going to look at a more thorough calendar in just a minute, but just again, kind of recognizing that this should not just be kind of a haphazard way of looking at this process, and that we should be kind of thinking about it and planning it. And as the new board year even turns over here in January, to start to think about that. So, and, I mentioned the fact that it is a process, and so that process really starts with the goal setting, right? So we do that kind of back in the summer, kind of essentially saying, what are those 3 or 4 things we think are so important to move the district forward that we're going to hold the superintendent accountable by putting them in her evaluation. So, and that's kind of, the board's piece of helping determine the what, right? And then we turn it over to the superintendent to help identify the how. So that's kind of then what kind of starts that process. So again, recognizing that, when I just talked about the legal piece of it, I was saying that the evaluation shall be based on the goals and the objectives in the district. So that's why we have this annual goal-setting meeting and annual goal-setting discussion. And like I said, it shouldn't just be happening kind of that once a year, but again, there should be ongoing conversations about what the progress that we're making. So one of the things a few years ago when we redid this tool, kind of sat and thought about how helpful it might be as kind of an optional step in the process to maybe have an evaluation pre-conference. And kind of what that means is before anyone sits down, before the board sits down to start the evaluation, to kind of sit down and meet with the superintendent and kind of have a conversation, recognizing that board members have different experiences based on perhaps what committees you've been on, how long you've been on the board. So kind of making sure that all of the board members have the information that they need to complete an informed evaluation. So it is just that opportunity then to make sure that you have that understanding. So some of those updates could potentially be in public, like if the superintendent were to give an update on the goals, that could be just a general update that would take place in public. But if you wanted then to have an evaluative conversation about that update, like I was hoping to see this or what happened here, any of those, then that piece of it then would be an executive session where you would have that kind of the evaluative component of that conversation. So I had mentioned, sometimes with new board members just starting in January, that one of the things then that becomes really important is evidence, right? And especially too, if we are kind of fulfilling our responsibility of not being in the schools and not running the schools, then we need to rely on the superintendent then to provide us evidence in terms of the accomplishments of the goals and of her work. So as we kind of take New Jersey School Board's tool, and I know people have asked me, do we have to use your tool? And the answer is no, we just have to be in compliance with statute and code, but our tool is a way to help you do that. So it starts out first with kind of the, capturing the individual input by the superintendent logging in, and then each board member logging it individually so that everyone's voice is being heard. And then New Jersey School Boards takes that individual input when the board is done and compiles it into one anonymous document then that reflects all opinions. Then we say, so then similar to the other work that the board does, the board moves forward based on the opinions of the board majority, right? So then we kind of then can use that compilation report to then help us identify what the board majority is thinking. It also needs to be the board having a discussion in executive session to kind of clarify that and come to a common understanding. And then the state calls it an annual performance report. So we considered that kind of document, the annual performance report that reflects the majority opinion then to be the superintendent's actual evaluation. So our tool is broken down into 2 parts. So the first part looks at the district goals, and we kind of just went through why that's important. And then the next piece is the 6 leadership standards. And those standards came from the national standards for professional educators. They used to be called the ISLIC standards. But I think there's 11 of those, and those are not only for superintendents. So we worked with the Superintendents Association and said, okay, what can we extract out of those that's most relevant to board members and board members and superintendents working together, and so came up with 6. Yeah, I know you said 11. That sounds like a lot, right? So then those 6 leadership standards then help us to identify the areas of strength, areas where more growth is needed, and also helps us stay focused on kind of the professional level of this work. You know, sometimes we would see board members straying into areas that really, you know, weren't that meaningful to the work. So when you stay focused on the goals and stay focused on the professional standards, it helps make sure then that the evaluation is really measuring the work that the superintendent is doing. So in terms of looking at the process, so, you know, just kind of in some housekeeping, I guess, of kind of making sure your census is up to date with everyone listed, identified who's the board president. You know, you'll need to know what your username and password is, and then the process starts with the superintendent as the first one to log in, and then once the superintendent has completed her part and hit submit, then 48 hours later, then the board members get an automatic generated email saying, okay, board, your superintendent has completed her part, and then 48 hours kind of gives her the opportunity to go say, oops, I should have said this, or I forgot to put that in there, and kind of gives her that opportunity to do that, and then the board automatically gets a link then for you to go ahead and get started. So this is kind of a sample of what it looks like. So the first piece that the superintendent does when she logs in is to input the district goals. And then she does kind of like a self-assessment rating. Does she think the goal was achieved, satisfactory progress was made, or little or no progress made? And, you know, one of the things that we've been seeing are more and more multi-year goals. So sometimes satisfactory progress may be the best that we can do because we intended it to take a couple years for this goal to get achieved. So we kind of have to look at it from that context, and then the superintendent can provide either comments or links to information, kind of to that evidence then for board consideration. So that when you are in the tool, when you log in, you will see then that the self-assessment that the superintendent provided, and then you will be able to asked to give a rating. What do you think? Do you think the goal was achieved, satisfactory progress was made, or little or no progress? And then you are asked to provide comments. And one of the things I would see a lot is that when board members were making comments, they were directing them to the superintendent as if they were speaking to the superintendent. But really, these comments are for your fellow board members, right? This is your individual input, and as a group, you're going to sit down and come up with what a collective comment would be. So your fellow board members need to understand, why did you give this rating? So this then is helping your fellow board members to see, kind of what you were thinking. So these then are those 6 standards. And you can see, like, when we redid this tool, the standards were more along kind of functional lines of like personnel, finance, kind of said, okay, that the job of the superintendent is much more expansive than that. So wanted to make sure that we really captured the essence of the work that was happening. And then also wanted to bring your attention on the rating scale to the opportunity to select not observed. Recognizing again that we would like new board members, or really anyone, if you haven't had enough of personal experience to evaluate something, but want you to participate as much as you can, but not feel compelled to evaluate something that you don't feel comfortable doing so. So it's not a negative, it's not a positive, it's just strictly saying didn't see it or just don't have enough experience. So this looks kind of busy, but this is kind of an example then of what, we said there were 6 standards. So here's the first one, mission, vision, and core values. So there's kind of like a standard statement. And then one of the things that also got changed was that for each one of those ratings, like exemplary, proficient, in the past, kind of maybe what one board member thought was exemplary, another one thought was proficient. So we tried to help board members kind of get more on the same page by providing a definition for each one of the standards of what those ratings mean. Then if you kind of see the red in the middle there, that's kind of essentially saying that the superintendent has the ability to provide links. So like usually there might be like a Google folder that says, say, standard 1, and then whatever information wanted to put in there, then when you as the board member are in standard 1 and want to do your part of the evaluation, you then can look at the evidence. It's not required that you put the evidence in this way. Some superintendents have their own way that they like to communicate with the board about their accomplishments, but just making you aware that this is an opportunity available to you. So then we know that we're kind of looking at this overall standard, but in order then to assess the standard, we took it and we broke it down into some smaller, more meaningful parts. And so initially when we were having the conversation of putting this tool together, said, okay, we see these parts, do we just kind of let the board members go down to the bottom and just give an overall rating? Or would it be more helpful to make sure that it's, been done very thoughtfully by asking you then to put a rating in each one of the indicators, just so that, you have taken the time to really look at it. And then at the end, then you are going to be asked for an overall rating for that standard. And the system, like somebody asked me, well, does it automatically fill it out? Like if I gave, say, all proficients, will it automatically mark proficient? And the answer is no, you still have to fill it out, because things have different weights, right? Like something could be like super important to your board that might not be that important to another board. And so you really kind of have to put it in the context of what's going on in your district for your board. And then you also have the opportunity then to provide comments for each one of the 6 standards. So then once, once the board is done, then I would be in communication with the board president, and then kind of the system automatically compiles it. Like as soon as board member 1 is done, it kind of starts this compilation document. Then when board member 2 is done, it adds it to it. When board member 3, so that by the time the last board member is done, that compiled document is done and ready. So I just have to set a flag in our system that says, okay, system, Mount Olive's done, so let's send this off to the board president. So then the board president then is able to, and I will send you an instruction sheet, but able then to log in and be able then to download. We break the compiled document into 2 reports, one that just looks at the goals, one that looks at the standards. There's also that template for that annual performance report. And then there's also a tracking report that really any of the board members can see. Like once you're done, you can log back in to see what kind of progress that the board is making. Because as much as we try, like usually we get to about, 6 or 7, it's like, okay, we got to get those last couple board members, right, to get it done, because we really do, value having as many voices participating as possible. So we really try as much as we can to get everyone who can participate to participate. So this is kind of just a sample then of what that compiled document might look like for a goal. So just list the goal, kind of the comments that the superintendent provided. You can see the superintendent's, in this example, self-rating was that this goal was achieved. Then you can see that the kind of compiled the responses. So 8 board members responded, 6 agreed with the superintendent, 1 thought satisfactory progress was made, and 1 thought little or no progress was made. So you can see then how this would help the board be able to have a conversation about what the majority opinion would be. And then this is kind of the same type of information then that you would get for a standard, of kind of taking the standard then and kind of seeing. So this would help you identify areas even within that standard that might be particularly strong, areas within that standard that could potentially be areas for growth. So again, just giving you information to help you have informed conversations to come up with a majority opinion. So again, then so we're to the point now where we've got this compiled document, we've got everyone's opinions, so now we know then that we've got to take that and we've got to come together and we've got to then now determine what the majority opinion is. So we use this compiled document, and so a lot of times the board president or their designee, like sometimes it's the personnel chair or whoever is designated to do this, might take that compiled document and then take that template for the summary and write a draft, so that sometimes it's easier for the board to start with something, right? And kind of have that conversation. And some boards, they don't. They just start from scratch and kind of help write it while they're sitting there. And in other boards, they might start with this draft and tweak it. What's important is that all of the board members have the opportunity to have a conversation, come together and talk about, come to an agreement about what the majority opinion would be. So we know that anytime then the board would go into executive session to discuss the superintendent's performance, that you would have to, issue the superintendent a rights notice, but that, would just be the process that you would follow. And then recognizing that the end result, would be that annual performance report or that summary document. So this then is what that template looks like. So you just are essentially able to just go ahead and, kind of fill in the blanks or fill in the template. And so it just, you can see that there's signature lines for the board president and the superintendent, which helps when CUSAC is looking to make sure that the board did the evaluation and by what day it was signed. So that's, part of that evidence. So it essentially just takes each one of the goals, and then as a board, you give kind of an overall rating on that goal and some overall comments like to help support then the rating that that reflects the majority opinion. The same would be true for each one of the 6 standards. And then, we talked earlier about the importance of those areas of strength and those areas where more growth and improvement is needed. So again, trying to keep it focused on the standards and keep it focused on the professional work. And then the opportunity, then there's an open-ended box if there was any other summative comments that the board would like to make to the superintendent. So that then would essentially be then the evaluation document that when the board and the superintendent then go into executive session to have the conversation, the kind of that sit-down summary conference, that would be the document then that you would be discussing. So it is suggested that you share the document with the superintendent at least a couple days ahead of time. And even some boards have said, it's kind of intimidating for all of us to just sit there with her the very first time. So a lot of times maybe just the board president and the vice president might go and just kind of present it to her, kind of go through it, see if you have any questions and say, okay, we'll see you with the full board here then, in a few days. But just to kind of make it a fair process and see if there's any questions. And, since we're kind of working together, right, to kind of help the students. So, one of the things in the beginning when I talked about the legal parts, I said, that it was required that it had to be a majority of the total membership of the board. But one of the things that we suggest is that all non-conflicted board members be present. And the reason for that is if the evaluation document reflects the majority opinion, what if I was that holder of the minority opinion? Like in that first goal that I showed where it said kind of the majority opinion was what was achieved, but somebody checked that they thought little or no progress was made. So that might not be included in the written document that the superintendent receives, but one of the rights that I have of the holder of that minority opinion, it is I have the right to be heard. So I could say, you know what, superintendent, while the evaluation says this, I was hoping for this, or this is kind of what I was expecting. So, you always have that, and so you never know who's going to be the minority opinion when, so that's why it's important then to give everyone the opportunity to be there and be part of that conference. So here I kind of took that calendar and I just kind of looked at your calendar and said, okay, ideally we would start with that July deadline, knowing that we have to be done then, and work backwards. So then let's take your last meeting in June and say, okay, and try not to add any additional meetings through this process, right, if we don't have to. So just say, okay, when's your last meeting in June? Then let's make that be the sit-down meeting. Then let's, then you actually have 2 meetings in June. So then the one before could be everybody kind of reviewing the annual performance report and saying, yep, that looks great. You did a great job. This reflects the majority opinion. In May, then you could have that discussion about to have the compilation report, maybe the draft, and kind of have that discussion about what you think the majority opinion should be. Then we would back into that of having the board members need to have theirs completed within enough time to kind of allow for that draft or allow, for the board to sit down together. And then that means then that the superintendent's got to be done and enough time to give the board at least a couple weeks to complete their portion of the evaluation. And then if you wanted to have that pre-conference, then I just kind of backed up your meetings, and that would kind of been the end of your March meeting. So it kind of allows you to go through all the steps, give yourself some time, and not have to add any extra meetings. So that's really kind of why I say, you almost have to start planning in January, right? So again, just kind of as we look at a process and just saying like, what makes it effective? Everyone can be heard. We all had the opportunity to come to a consensus on the majority opinion. The minority opinion can exercise their rights. It builds a productive relationship between the board and the superintendent. We're in compliance. And then most importantly, it's a framework for student success, right? That is what the focus should be. What have we accomplished in this past year to be able to advance the success of our students? And then what do we need to work on next year to help keep that moving, right? So kind of as we kind of sum this up and like a few kind of things to think about, again, saying it's not a once a year thing, it's like a whole year process. And, you know, a lot of times I've heard board members like kind of focus on like the latest and greatest thing, like if something just happened and then all of a sudden that takes up a bigger space in the evaluation instead of thinking, okay, the evaluation has to reflect the whole year's worth of performance. So you have to consider that. We talked about the importance of evidence, the importance of communication throughout the process. You know, we always say that when it's time to discuss the evaluation, it shouldn't be a surprise to the board in terms of the progress that's been made throughout the year, and it shouldn't be a surprise to the superintendent about what the board's expectations or thoughts were about that. So we should be, you know, kind of communicating throughout the year, the importance of all board members who can participate, making sure that they do just because of the value of, you know, your voice. And then kind of the last piece of this of making sure that the focus is on the goals and on the standards. I mean, I had a situation last year where the board set a goal, the superintendent followed the goal, but they didn't like the outcome. So he's like, this isn't fair. Like, you know, they're dinging me for, I did what I was supposed to do. I can't help the fact that the outcome wasn't what we hoped, you know? So from the board's perspective, we really have to make sure that we're being fair and saying, this is what the goal was. This is what the superintendent said she was going to do. Did she accomplish what she said she was going to do? And then you know, the importance of the standards. So that was all that I had in taking you through that process. And then wanted to see if the board members have any questions for me.
Any questions from the board? I know this is going to be our first year utilizing the online tool from NJSBA. Anyone?
Okay. Well, maybe the questions will come up as you go along, but I'll be there to
Ms.
happy to help
Peterson,
in
is this
any
our
way.
last visit with you? You're retiring?
May 1st, yeah.
May 1st? So maybe we'll have to drag you back in. You're probably very busy.
Madam President, I just have a quick question for Ms. Peterson. So this, is like Ms. Narcisse said, the board's doing this year. For next year, though, shouldn't Dr. Bangia start, at a certain point, she should load up all her information prior, right? What do you recommend for that? Isn't there a date like September 30th? I know that's how it used to be when we used to do with our old superintendent. He'd have to have all his goals, what he wanted to do, load it up. We'd have to approve that as a Board of Ed and then track it through the entire year.
So the way the tool is set up is because some boards are not done by July 1st. Okay. The tool is, and people have asked us if we could do exactly what you just described, but because there are so many boards that are not done, let's say in this case, the 2025 evaluation stays open until the end of December, and then January is when we turn it over then to the next year. So the superintendent wouldn't have the opportunity, and superintendents have asked, so they've kind of figured out their own way of kind of tracking it until you can load it into the tool. So, no, good question.
And what I can do is, we had, Dr. Bangia and I had set up a mid-year document that was sent around. I'll resend that to the board this week then, so you could see what were set as the goals, as well as some of the progress that was discussed. And we had done that in January, I think was originally set.
It was January.
Yep. So we'll resend that, and then that will feed into the next steps. So.
Perfect. Well, good luck. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. It's been a
Congratulations on
pleasure.
your retirement.
Thank you.
Okay, with that.
I forgot, I also have some.
Oh, you have presents for us?
I passed some out last year, but for anyone who doesn't have it.
Yep. Do you guys want do you want to leave the stack maybe for us and we'll, or a couple of them? I have mine. Yeah.
Thank you.
And Ms. Peterson, it didn't change from last year's, right?
No,
The
the
same.
booklet didn't change.
Okay, same guide.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we will move to, oh, we have just one committee report. Anything further, Dr. Bangia?
Nope.
No? Okay. So then with that, we'll move to finance and operations. Ms. Fitzgerald.
Yes, so the Finance Committee met again February 19th at 5:30. In attendance were Ms. Figuera, Ms. Schoening, Mr. Orzillo, myself, and Dr. Bangia. The focus of this meeting was primarily budget development. We wanted to take a separate meeting to really just focus on the progress of that. So Ms. Schoening and Dr. Bangia took us through line by line where we are in the 25-26 budget. What I really appreciated about how much work went into that was that we kind of looked at the budget on a worst case scenario. If this was the least amount of money that we could end up with, what would our budget look like? And I appreciate that because at the time we didn't have what the final state aid numbers would be. And so they put a lot of detail into looking line by line at what we could do, what would the projected budget look like if the worst case scenario came through on state aid. So there are a lot of steps left in this budget process, including getting to budget at actuals from the state aid, not just at the worst case scenario, which hopefully will be more fun. That our next meeting, what we'll be doing is looking at the final budget, and that's March 4th.
State aid comes out on Friday, the 28th.
Exactly. So we're all fingers crossing it.
Wait,
But
baby
worst
breath.
case scenario, it's up to 3%, minus 3%, right?
Yes, they sent a broadcast, which all my years, they've never hinted anything out about state aid, and they stated the most they would cut a district state aid would be 3%. So that's what we're planning, just in case.
Yeah. So Friday's the day. But I can't say enough to everybody who was involved in putting together budget, Dr. Bangia, Ms. Schoening. It was the amount of detail that goes into it. If you like spreadsheets the way some of us do, I really do. It's beautiful. It is a thing of beauty and a lot of detail.
Do we have any questions from the board? No? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to Subcommittee and Parent-Teacher Association Liaison Reports. Do we have anyone in the public for PTA, PTO, Parent Liaison Reports, schools? No? And any board members attend any meetings?
I was at the town council meeting last week. It was short and sweet. They basically passed some resolutions with some salary increases, and they discussed the Habitat for Humanity housing that's going, I guess it's 7 homes. They're trying to pass something where at least 3 of those homes are marketed with preference for veterans.
Oh,
So they're trying to, I guess they're working through that with the lawyer. Also, senior center is looking for 2 wheelchairs, if we have anybody who knows anybody to donate any. And there's a job fair tomorrow night at the senior center. And that's about it. Oh, and the other thing I saw real quick, I'm sure everybody here knows, but there's going to be 180 condos added, and they're 2 bedrooms.
You're taking my,
Oh.
my segue away.
Sorry, Lisa.
That's the segue.
yeah.
Yeah, so Lisa's gonna talk
Lisa,
about
take it away.
condos.
I was at the planning board, and that's all we did until 10:30 at night, was they voted on passing the 186 2-bedroom luxury apartments. There's gonna be 3 buildings. There's not a whole lot more to say, statistically, they're trying to, work some things. The good thing about it, so Rutgers said that we could have up to 200 students potential, but their planning engineer said, I don't think it's going to be more than 50 or 80, so who knows? Like, we'll see that when it comes. The only good thing, and this isn't really for a school thing, but in order for them to get those units built and get their CO, they do have to make a senior housing where the home goods is. So that is in compliant with this 186 units. They also have to turn 20 of their older units into low and moderate income housing. So we will, as a school, as a state, will be adhering to those necessities. But yeah, so it did pass 186, 2 bedrooms.
Ms. Fenton, is that for the Village Green?
Yep.
That is
So
Village
I
Green.
just want to, for the record, and it's out there on social media, and I actually have it. 3 years ago, they were still doing virtual Zoom meetings, and I went on being a board member with concern of them rezoning that area. And we were told, myself and another gentleman in town, Mr. Fulton, and it's all videotaped, I can pass it along. We're told they were only doing that for rain runoff. They had no intention of ever building. The video is out there, so I don't believe they're our engineer that's only be 50 to 60 students. I think it's going to be a tremendous burden onto
agree.
the school district.
Well, what people usually don't realize is, that 1 bedroom could house quite a few students. And I did get up and explain that to them. But I guess the state of New Jersey, it's illegal to ask for any compensation for schools. Other states, you can ask for, building money or whatnot.
Impact
So,
fees.
yes, impact fees.
Yeah.
Yeah, so actually, Mr. Fulton was there as well. I guess he did have some, because he had some runoff issues. They were very compliant and took care, and he said he was satisfied with how they were doing things. Like I said, we were there from 7 to 10:30 about the excavating and, the garbage, you name it.
So for the public, we're speaking about the Village Green on Route 46, and it's my understanding that these units will be taking up where their mini golf course was in the
I
back.
don't even think that's if you're looking at Route 46, there's going to be one that you can see on Route 46, that's Building A, and then Building B and C are by the water tower.
Okay.
If you guys know where that is. So they're kind of hidden. But the one, Building A, I guess, I really don't know where.
Yeah, they had like a putt, I think a green, like a putt-and green.
Okay, and it may be, but that's the only one you're gonna really be able to see from the road, but the water tower is back there a little bit, and it's kind of going around the outside of the complex.
And then did they get the variance that was required for their parking, I guess,
Yes,
before the
so
town then?
they required 300 spots, and I guess they approved around 280 spots they're going to be doing, but they did 2 engineering researches that say that there's 100 spots open at all times, so they do supposedly have plenty of parking for everybody. They are required to put some EV in there, obviously handicap in there, so they're...
Yes, I see that.
I've lived there for 32 years and there's not enough.
Well, so...
My big thing is, I'm sorry I'm not talking about it,
That's okay.
but I don't know how people are gonna afford it because the 2-bedroom apartment that's been there for 30 years is $2,800. So
Yeah.
who's gonna move in there?
This is supposed to be luxury, high-end.
Yeah, these are, the luxury part of it is there's gonna be like a rooftop kind of area, a common area. They're gonna have kiosks for 1 underground parking per apartment. The other spaces that I'm talking about, the 100 free spaces, are 150 feet away. That's for the second car. I agree, I'm not really sure how this is working. I am just giving my
I
meeting minutes.
Our concern's more about the kids as opposed to the parking there.
I was going to say, though, our bigger concern is you're putting more units in one apartment complex that already feeds into one of those schools that is already very large. We don't know the needs of each student that will, come into living there. So what are the requirements that or, costs that would impact us? And we don't know truly the ages that would end up that, we don't know until they register if they're all going to end up in elementary or if they're going to be spread across in the timeline of that.
Well,
So
and
at
to
the end,
be
it does
honest with
impact
you-
us.
To be honest with you, that is not my biggest concern. It's the Love Lane housing that they approved the first unit. That was, Rutgers stated that could be approximately 600 students from
Was that
there.
the original quote was over 500 potential
Yeah,
students impacted?
Yeah, so, we're
Love
gonna
Lane.
have, I mean,
Referendum.
you're looking at at least a minimum of 600 students coming in the next 5 years.
Madam President, I just want to clarify, that was, what I went on was the Zoom meeting for the town council meeting, it wasn't the planning board. I don't know if I had said planning board, I apologize.
I think that's okay.
They did make they did the runoff stuff, so.
So at the end of the day, we have apartments, condos coming in, townhomes with we'll say over 100 students, and then we still have the Love Lane development with over 500 potential students impacting the district over the course of under 5 years.
Yes.
Is that
Well, so
an assumption?
so the 600 average students for the Love Lane, that's for all the units. I forgive me, I don't have it on
That's
this
okay.
notebook, but only the one section is starting now, so it's gonna populate quickly, but I guess approximately 200 to 300 students in the next couple of years.
What is the timeline? Just overall, what is the project timeline? I'm sorry if I missed that.
To be honest with you, I'm not sure. They can start soon.
Okay.
But it really all depends. And this was the thing was they are allowed to build, but they cannot get their CO until that senior housing is done, and the 30 moderate income houses. So this can break ground today, really, but I'm not sure. They didn't have a timeline
Okay.
on the two other things.
Yeah.
They're going to talk about that, I believe, in their next meeting next
Okay.
month, so I'll find out
Yeah,
more
I
then.
think the
That'd be
last
great.
I saw on the senior housing was that they had to go back to the drawing board on the access for the parking and handicap access for getting to the units, because units would be.
The units are second floor units.
Yep,
Yeah.
so they're being where the Home Goods used to be, in that storefront area.
So apparently the first floor is gonna be like the game room, the cafeteria and whatnot for senior living. And then the above floors will be, I think it's 3 stories, will be for senior living. So yeah, that has to happen in order for this to happen, so I honestly don't know.
But at the end of the day, this board still needs to have that in mind as we're making our decisions for the future, because, it will compound going forward. This sounds like
We need to anticipate.
we're talking at least within 5 years.
No question.
Yeah,
We'll probably need a new demographic, I would venture, we're gonna
We
need a
should
new.
put it in the budget
yeah, a
regardless.
new demographic study at some point,
yeah.
Because December 22 is probably outdated by
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
Was 22 was the last time we had that?
December 22.
Yeah, that's probably was out of date by the time we got it.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Did anyone else attend any other meetings? No. Okay, I attended 2. I attended the CMS School Community Association. Their next meeting will be March 12th, 7:30 via Zoom. They have upcoming February 27th. They will actually be doing an 80s dance that will be running with kindergarten starting at, 5th grade, starting at 9:50 in the morning, and each grade through there. So, Dr. Banji, are you going to be attending the 80s attire?
I don't know about that one.
When is
I'll
it?
see if I can make it happen.
It's the rock
I
and
already got
roll
an outfit
time, February
My
27th.
hair.
You can borrow Jen.
It's apparently back in, so I got it.
Oh, I heard that, yes, I heard 80s and 90s attire is back in. I'm just trying to get through all of they had a lot going on. I actually printed all of their notes here. They did have a book fair that occurred, and then they also have their kindness matters. They're selling T-shirts right now. Let's just see what else we have.
Cereal boxes?
Cereal boxes is at Tints, and I think that was all I had with CMS, and I apologize. Then I also attended the Tints Road Schools PTA meeting. So they have March 15th, a pancake breakfast at Applebee's occurring. They also have their PTO school dance on April 11th. And what else did they have? They provided an entire list of their end-of-year events for the 5th grade. So some of these cross over to other schools, but so they'll also have April 30th, their Treps Marketplace and their TRS art show. They will have their 5th grade field trip on May 13th. And let's see what other, they have their cereal box donations. They're collecting them now until I believe it's March 7th. And those cereal boxes can be dropped off at the school, and they will be donated to the food pantry. They also had their duck donut sale. They sold over 80 dozen donuts, and they distributed 14 boxes of donuts to local community helpers. That included the police department, library, EMS, and fire department. And so let's see, what else do they have? They have a lot going on. On April 11th, they also will be doing Pie Day. Pizza kits will be for sale. And that will be starting on March 14th. The school dance is on April 11th, sorry. Pie Day is March 14th. And I think that is all I have to report from the PTAs. Did I miss anything? I'm sure I missed something.
Can I piggyback on that
Yeah.
cereal box? Because I was talking to her about that. If they could get enough cereal boxes, they want to line them up like dominoes in the hallways and see how, knock them down. I think that's going to be so cool. And I think ShopRite has a sale on cereal this week if anybody's interested in donating. Isn't that cute?
Anything else? All right, seeing none, I have nothing for President's report. And at this time, then, we'll move on to public comments on action items. Members of the community may comment on any action item prior to board discussion. Please state your name and address for the record. All comments must be respectfully presented. Abusive or obscene comments will not be tolerated. And that's for action items only. There's another public comment at the end. And the mic is open for any comments regarding action items. Going once, going twice.
Can I ask a question on action item?
Sure.
It's for Mrs. Schilling. I was talking to you a little bit about the bill list and the food service. Would you mind explaining that part of the bill to me, how it's broken down?
So, in the past, so that's part of our food service operation. Mascios is our new food service management company who took over July 1st. In the past, the board has not seen any of the revenues or expenditures flowing through that account. The only time you would hear about the account is during the audit or if there was anything that came up during the year. So I brought this up in Finance Committee that I wanted to bring, it flows through Fund 60 as an enterprise fund. I wanted that to be part of the financial software because we do pay bills out of that account. We repair equipment, we purchase equipment, we pay the food service management company. It's a separate bank account, and the daily lunch deposits and breakfasts are put into this account, and we account for all the receipts and disbursements. And in the past, it was done via Quicken, which is difficult. It's a simplistic program, but you as a board are not able to see what goes in and out of that account and approve the disbursements. So having said that, You will see on the bills list, Fund 60, anything with a Fund 60 account is our food service account. That bill to Mascios is operations for the month of July. It fluctuates because it's based on the number of free and reduced lunch, full lunch served, any type of, their purchases vary throughout the school year. You know, they'll only purchase inventory when it's lower. So it's never going to be the same amount every month. So January was a high month because they did purchase more inventory. I get on a monthly basis from Mascios their operating statement, and my assistant and I match it up with the cash coming in and other reports. And so that you're able to see. It doesn't flow through the board secretary's report. You can see it on the treasurer's report. You'll see it says Fund 60, and it'll have it in there.
And this is from
So-
January, yes? Just want to confirm. This was January. I think we said July, but it was
Yes.
January.
No, January. On the bills list, you
Yep,
say it's for the month of
exactly.
January.
Perfect.
Thank you for explaining that. I appreciate it.
Sure.
I knew what she meant.
Did I say July?
It's okay.
I think you
I just wanted to
did.
make sure, I just want to make
Change it to
sure
January.
we're on the record for saying it's
J.
January.
It's J.
We're all dreaming of July and warm weather right
There you
now.
go.
Well, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, we will move on to approval of expenditures and reports. Dr. Giordano.
Yes, Madam President, on the recommendation of the superintendent, make a motion to approve the monthly expenditures report 6.1 to 6.8.
Second.
Do we have any questions or comments from the board? No, seeing none, we'll take a roll call, please.
Dr. Giordano,
Yes.
Mrs. Aquino,
Yes.
Mrs. Fenton,
Yes.
Mrs. Figuera,
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Mrs. Melendez,
Yes.
Mrs. Narcisse,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Orzillo.
Yes.
All right, and we will move on to personnel action items. And Ms. Aquino.
Upon the recommendation of the superintendent, I'd like to make a motion to move personnel action items 7.1 through 7.17.
Second.
And do we have questions or comments from the board with relation to personnel action items? No? I just wanted to say congratulations to Miss Emily Kramer. I see that you were moving on. You'll be surely missed. With that, I'll take a roll call.
Mrs. Aquino,
Yes.
Mrs. Fenton.
Yes.
Mrs. Figuera,
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Dr. Giordano,
Yes.
Mrs. Melendez,
Yes.
Mrs. Narcisse.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Neill,
I abstain from anything with Christian Humphrey, yes to everything else.
Mr. Orzillo.
Yes.
And with that, we'll move to curriculum and technology. Ms. Figueroa.
Upon recommendation of the superintendent, I'd like to make a motion to approve items 8.1 through 8.5.
Second.
Do we have questions or comments from the board? No? Okay, seeing none. We'll take a roll call, please.
Mrs. Figuera,
Yes.
Dr. Giordano,
Yes.
Mrs. Aquino,
Yes.
Mrs. Fenton,
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzgerald,
No to 8.2, yes to everything else.
Mrs. Melendez,
Abstain in anything related to Angela Sanchez and yes to everything else.
Mrs. Narcisse,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Orzillo.
Yes.
All right, with that, we'll move to finance and operations. Ms. Fitzgerald.
Upon the recommendation of the superintendent, I'd like to make a motion to approve action items 9.1 through 9.6.
Second.
Do we have any questions or comments from the board? No? Okay, seeing none, we'll take a roll call, please.
Mrs. Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Mrs. Aquino,
Yes.
Mrs. Fenton,
Yes.
Mrs. Figuera,
Yes.
Dr. Giordano,
Yes.
Mrs. Melendez,
Yes.
Mrs. Narcisse,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Orzillo.
Yes.
All right, and we will move to Public comments. Students, parents, employees, and community members may comment on any item of interest pertaining to the Mount Olive School District. Please state your name and address for the record. All comments must be respectfully presented. Abusive or obscene comments will not be tolerated. And the mic over here is open. Did anyone wish to come to the mic? Yes.
Yes, welcome.
Yep. And just state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Precious Pill. My address is 37 Whippoorwill Road, Bud Lake, New Jersey, 07828. Even though our school's principal and our superintendent stopped responding to my questions, I have to continue to be an advocate. I have to keep trying. So tonight, instead of questions, of course, because I can't do questions anyway, I shall propose. I propose that we stop observing Christopher Columbus Day because it represents one of the darkest periods of oppression, theft, hate, murder, and ignorance, all because people look different from those explorers. I also propose that we begin to learn about Juneteenth because it represents the beginning of equality, despite the fact that the Black codes and Jim Crow laws were passed shortly after. I hope we can begin to build a school district where we teach full truths in a child-friendly way, and not just from the viewpoint or the point of view of the historical winners. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? The mic is open. Going once? Anyone else? Okay. I will close public comments, and we'll move on to old business. Members of the board may comment on any item or topic that was previously discussed by the board. Anyone?
Yes, Madam President, just following back up again, and I will be each board meeting. Is Ms. Clean going to be coming to the next board meeting to present on the special ed audit? Do we have a date on that?
We can get a date.
Okay, super, thank you.
Anyone else from the board? Old business? All right, seeing none, we will move to new business. Any board member may introduce any new item or topic of discussion for the board to consider. Anyone? All right. We will move on to board comments. Members of the board may comment on any item of interest pertaining to the school district. And we'll start at the end. Dr. Giordano. You can
Just like
kick
to
us.
congratulate Coach Smythe, Coach Romano, and all the wrestlers from Mount Olive for winning the district title and sending, I think it's one of our largest, if not the largest group of our athletes to the regions. So they had a banner year once again, so congratulations.
And Ms. Stroh.
Just a kudos to our music department. If you went to the all-district concert, choir, are you right? You gonna make it? Okay. If you went to the all-district choir concert last week, to get that many groups of human beings up on stage, performing off the stage, I think we were out in an hour and 15 minutes. I mean, it was a thing of beauty. I don't know how they did it. It was amazing. You got to hear every single group, and then they moved on, and it was incredible. It was so well orchestrated, and so to everybody who was responsible for making that so efficient and also so enjoyable, thank you very much.
Ms. Melendez.
Congratulations to all the athletes and to the music department also. And I wish the best to the robotics teams and all the endeavors that we have during this upcoming weekend, especially wrestling.
Ms. Aquino.
I had no comments.
Wow. Sorry.
Did they take all your
Long day
comments?
today.
Ms. Benton.
I'm not going to repeat what they said, but everything they said.
Ditto. I think that's what you want. Ditto.
And Mr. Orzillo.
Ditto.
Look at that. Well done. Well done, sir.
Ms. Figueroa.
Nothing for me tonight.
Oh, we're going fast. Jeez. Ms. O'Neill? Okay, I'm going to add to Dr. Giordano. We also had Molly Smythe is one of our, I think the second in record to go to districts. I think we had, what, almost nine?
States.
9 students overall qualify for individual states, and then Molly
Molly
will go into
The wrestlers the
individual.
male wrestlers are going to regions. Molly qualified for the states.
Yep, so on the female side, Molly will be on the individual state platform. Those individuals take place March 6th, 7th, and 8th. And then we have robotics coming up on March 8th. And as you heard, we have lots of music, orchestras and band coming up this week. And tomorrow, right?
Band tomorrow.
Band tomorrow, orchestra.
Band's Wednesday, orchestra's Thursday.
I have to look at a calendar. With that, we have,
We also had a birthday.
Yes.
Mr. Orzillo, happy birthday. Anybody else?
where's our music department to sing? Because I'm not singing. Who wants to play it?
He turned 30.
This is his anniversary of his 30th. That's all we'll say. And that's all I have. And with that, I will take a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second? Okay. Resolved that the board meet in confidential session for the purpose of discussing personnel, matters of attorney-client privilege, pending or anticipated litigation. I think that's all I have on the list. And we are now in closed session. 5?
Is that talking about the one from Mount Olive? The one that just got $40,000 raise? That one?
All right, we're waiting for board members.
Oh, thanks, man. I hit the same 50. Yeah, it's there.
Go ahead.
All right, I'm going to read.
Keeps getting better and better.
I'm going to enter into the minutes. We are back into session. Do we need to take a roll call?
Mrs. Aquino?
Here?
Mrs. Fenton?
Here.
Mrs. Figuera?
I was like, where did that come from?
Mrs. Fitzgerald?
Here.
Dr. Giordano?
Here.
Mrs. Melendez?
Here.
Mrs. Narcisse?
Here.
Mrs. O'Neill?
Here.
Mr. Orzillo?
Here.
All right, so we have one last item. We are adding to our agenda for finance 9.7. And it reads, whereas the Mount Olive Board of Education awarded a contract to JDM Consulting Services LLC of Clifton, New Jersey, originally approved on October 14th, 2024, to provide interim facilities project management services in accordance with the proposal dated October 11, 2024, in an amount not to exceed $34,500 effective on or about October 15, 2024 through December 31st, 2024. And whereas due to delays in the project caused by 2 change orders resulted in the vendor not being able to perform their obligations by the date of December 31st, 2024. And whereas the extension of this contract was discussed in committee and with the full board, and whereas the project is not scheduled to be completed until August 2025, and the board wishes to extend the vendor's services until June 30th, 2025 at no additional costs. Therefore, be it resolved that Mount Olive Township Board of Education extends the contract to JDM Consulting Services LLC of Clifton, New Jersey through June 30th, 2025 at no additional cost to the board. Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Nope, seeing none, we'll take a roll call. Ms. Troning?
Mrs. Narcisse?
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mrs. Aquino?
No.
Mrs. Fenton?
Yes.
Mrs. Figuera?
Yes.
Dr. Giordano?
No.
Mrs. Melendez?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Orzillo?
Yes.
Okay, and with that, we are done. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do we have a second? And all those in favor?